an unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to, remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's teachings.
In Buddhism, when practitioners share their understandings of the teachings and practice, it's offered on the basis of dana paramita. Dana is a Pali word that means generosity or to give freely, and this is done without the expectation of anything in return when the opportunity arises. And those who share their teachings at Great Tree do so on a dana basis. Please support their practice by giving what you can. You can go to greattreetemple.org. There's a giving page on the kind of upper right part of the webpage, and you can donate there. Our speaker today is our abbess, Rev Teijo Munnich. Daiju Teijo means Great Tree Right Stillness. Rev Teijo is a disciple and Dharma heir of Rev Dainin Katagiri. She studied with him from 1975 until his death in 1990, receiving formal training at Hokyoji in Minnesota, Tassajara Zen Mountain Center in California, and Hosshinji Sodo in Obama, Japan. Rev Munnich was ordained as a Zen priest in 1981, and in 1983 she began to envision a practice center and community, at its heart a residential practice for women, which came to be Great Tree, incorporated in 2004. And after a lengthy search, a location was found, and Great Tree opened her doors in 2005. And the title of Teijo's talk today is Jesus Was a Bodhisattva.
Morning. Well, I don't really know what a bodhisattva is, so sorry. This is a question that I've had since I began practicing, what is a bodhisattva? Because it seems to me that there's this tendency to see a bodhisattva as someone who just helps others. And sometimes I think there's a mistaken way of being only outward and not recognizing the inward. And then we run into something called burnout. And but burnout can only happen, I think, if we're doing it, just doing things just to feel good, or doing things in order to achieve something. And a bodhisattva, my understanding of bodhisattva right now at this time is that it's not someone who is just trying to get a feel-good experience from doing something for others, but someone who is someone who recognizes the relationship that we are within in life, and through that recognition, through that, it's called awakening, realizes that there is something more valuable, more important than what is usually grabbing us, or usually drawing us to have experiences that just make us happy or just make us feel good. So there's a little something that's enigmatic about this whole bodhisattva idea, because when we start to help others, or when we start to have the aspiration to help others, even something that comes from a very deep place, and it's said that when Buddha first awakened, that he wasn't sure, he didn't feel like he should teach, because he didn't feel like what he had awakened to could be taught. And yet, who knows what really happened, because this was more than 2,500 years ago, presumably. Oh, someone's back. What'd you do? Oh, are you back? But that he recognized that he had to at least try, because what he awakened to was a freedom from the suffering that he realized was part of the lives of everyone, every human being. And so he wanted to give it a shot, but he was very concerned because he didn't feel like it was something that could be explained, and if it was explained, we might take it more as an intellectual understanding rather than the experience itself. So for several years I was trying to figure out what was dukkha, because that is really the heart of Buddha's teaching. He talks about the middle way, but he said in order to really understand the middle way, we have to understand the things that we do, what we do in our life with our mind, with our discriminating mind, that causes what dukkha is and what causes dukkha, and how our mind is drawn by the idea that awakening is something outside of ourselves. And so he kind of made that his mission to try and share this experience, share this understanding with other beings, with other humans. I was thinking about this morning, about how his whole life, he dedicated his whole life just to that sharing and that effort to share. And so there's this kind of underlying, there was a question in the, let's see if I can find it. I put it on a document, and somehow that document disappeared before I came out here. But there's a question that came up in the Lion's Roar. How do we know if we're a Bodhisattva? And the question itself, I think, kind of made me smile, because I thought that's not really something that, if we know that we're a Bodhisattva, that knowing is kind of an overlay on the experience itself, of sharing the experience itself. So how did Buddha share the experience? I often think about my own teacher. How did he share the experience? Of course, Katagiri Roshi said he wasn't actually awakened, but that's probably a good sign. Because somehow he was able to share that experience just through his effort, just through his experience of the experience of awakening itself, caused him to want to share it. And he was very nervous about it. Whenever he sat down, his hands would be shaking at the beginning of his talk, until he kind of got into it. And it's hard to kind of explain it, but he'd start out and he'd be, Shoha Okumura does this too. He goes into all of this explanation and detail and background, and then all of a sudden Roshi would get into kind of a zone with his talking, and at that point we were all really there. And if I would remember, I would look over and see if his hands were shaking anymore, and they weren't. So there was always this, I could always recognize this tendency that he had to be very nervous about trying to communicate it, communicate what what it was he understood or experienced that gave him a certain kind of freedom. Shohaku Okamura translates freedom, nirvana as freedom, freeing our mind being free from that burden of dukkha, that feeling that we want to get something, that we want to get freedom, and so we chase after it. That's kind of dukkha. That feeling that what we have is not enough, so we've got to keep chasing after it. And I think Buddha must have come to terms with this at some point, where he realized that it really was not. It wasn't something that could be shared, and yet he had to try. And the Bodhisattva vows, beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Desires are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. The dharmas are boundless. I vow to master them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to attain it. None of these things are possible, you know. And within the vows, it expresses the impossibility. And yet, though that's the vow, to keep trying to share, to experience and to share. And so this experience that we have in Zazen, we come to it first of all because we're looking for some kind of freedom. We come to any spiritual practice looking for some kind of freedom. And this kind of seed or something inside of us that causes us to want to seek in this way is called bodhicitta. Bodhi means awakened and citta means mind. So it is the mind that awakens that causes us to want to follow the path, to search for that awakening. And within that search, we keep reawakening bodhicitta. So these bodhicitta, I've been thinking about that a lot. What is the bodhicitta that both causes us to seek and also is what we are seeking again and again, what we are seeking in this practice. And I think it comes, bodhicitta, the awakened mind, comes when we are devoting ourselves to the practice so much that we are letting go. You know, it happens again and again. There's different kinds of meditation practice, but in the kind of meditation practice that we do in Soto Zen, called shikantaza, or just sit, what happens again and again when we're just sitting is we notice what our mind is doing. And that very noticing is awakening. And that very awakening takes the fun out of not the fun. It takes the grasping out just for a moment. So these moments that when we notice I'm thinking too much, we just for a moment even let go of that grasping up to our thoughts, which is what causes us to obsess about our thinking and think too much. And those moments of recognition are moments of letting go, and that's the moment when we are experiencing bodhicitta. But how do we explain that? how can we share that experience with others? The interesting thing about it, to me, is that if we're not doing this seeking just for ourselves, if we really are seeking in an altruistic way, then we very naturally share that experience with everyone that we're with. And you see it during a sesshin. That during sesshins, you may stand up and just someone who's there will inspire you in some way, because they are really seriously engaged in the practice of Zazen. And so one person may just at one moment really inspire. And that's really how Bodhisattva sharing works. So really the only thing we have to do is just do our practice, whatever that means. At first we do our practice by just getting ourselves to the cushion, just sitting down and looking at a wall, or just sitting down, or just. And then once we get ourselves to the cushion, we've already let go of something, because I always say that anybody that does anything as stupid as looking at a wall has to let go of something. In order to do something like Zazen, we have to let go of our mind that's telling us, I've got something more important to do right now, or I don't need Zazen right now, or all these things that we tell ourselves. So Zazen is it has no draw. I mean, it's not. It doesn't make you immediately feel peace. It brings up all of those things that are creating obstacles. And if we buy into any of those things that are pulling us away from our center, pulling us away from bodhicitta, if we engage in any of those things, then we easily get carried away and lose sight of our awareness of that deeper reality. So if you find people like Katagiri Roshi and Thich Nhat Hanh and these teachers that really inspire other people and really draw other people, if you look at those people and say, what are they doing? What are they saying? Really what it comes down to is just their deep commitment to the practice, deep commitment to reawakening again and again within the practice. And what they say, sometimes, you can pick out phrases, or you can read written down what it is they say, but really to experience them is these kinds of people, and to experience each other when any one of us is drawn by the spiritual aspiration, by our spiritual aspiration that we return to again and again in order to continue with this practice. At those moments we are inspired by this person's practice. And actually, for me, Katagiri Roshi's greatest teaching was when he was sick and when he refused to carry on small talk, and when it was observable how he was cultivating his awareness through each one of those times when he had to come to terms with death, had to come to terms with pain from his illness. It was not through what he said, but through how he lived each moment. So one thing I wanted to share with you was something. There's various teachers that answered this question of how do we know when we are a bodhisattva. And now I'm back to Anne Klein says, you're a bodhisattva when you never waver from your powerful aspiration to be of benefit to everyone, not just in meditation, but throughout daily life. Well, she says you're a bodhisattva when you never waver from your powerful aspiration to be of benefit to everyone, not just in meditation, but throughout daily life. I think this is a very good description, but yet I think that it's a mistaken notion that we can ever get to a place where we never waver from our aspiration. You know, even if you're close to a teacher, as I was with Katagiri Roshi, he did waver. I saw him waver, you know. But, you know, in the title of his book, Returning to Silence, that was the first book of his talks. I feel like there's a lot of what the instruction is to us. Just return to silence. Just return to silence. And returning to silence doesn't always mean a quiet, peaceful place. Sometimes returning to silence means returning to that quiet place that brings up stuff that you might not want to look at. It might mean returning to that uncomfortable place. It might also mean returning to to a happy place, to a place of peace, and a place of harmony. I was at a friend's place the other day and just kind of looking at his books, and I picked up a book, and I can't even remember the title of it now. But one of the things that the book was pointing to is the importance of finding the balance between rest and action. And I think that kind of balance plays itself out in a lot of different ways. And I think that meditation practice is a great opportunity to explore how to find the balance. I remember when I first got into Zazen with my teacher, when I first found him and started going to the Minnesota Zen Center, I was in a place of searching, and I was in a place of not adhering to anything, really kind of living what I thought was moment by moment. But I was confused, and I also felt like I should be doing something. When I started meditating, I was having this feeling I should be doing something. I should be doing something important. What should I be doing that's important? And then over a period of time, this question kind of lingered for me. And one day, someone was put into a position of leadership who was very driven. And one of the things that he did, I think maybe he was president of the board or something, I don't remember what his position was, but he handed out questionnaires. He would hand them out as you walked into the meditation hall, so you'd be sure to get one. And he handed out these questionnaires, and what he was trying to elicit from people was more engagement with things that were happening at Zen Center. And I was very resistant to filling this out. I don't really know why. But when I finally sat down and filled it out, I realized that it was having the opposite effect on me to fill this out, because as I filled it out, I realized that I was doing too much and that I needed to cut back on what I was doing. And that was a big awakening for me. And, you know, you don't find that so much in Soto Zen because there's a very kind of driven aspect to it, even in Japan. It's a do kind of thing. Of course, in Japanese culture, it's a little bit more in balance anyway, because people are very inclined to constantly be helping each other. And so you aren't just putting out, you're also receiving. And that's not so prevalent in American culture. American culture is a very much of a kind of greedy culture where we take and we don't necessarily feel that need to give back. But for me, it was very helpful to meet someone like Thich Nhat Hanh who emphasized the importance of rest. I remember one time I heard him talk about how when animals get ill, when they get sick or hurt, they sleep, they rest. And we as humans, and of course human animals, but we don't, although we may have that inclination, our discriminating mind thinks we have to keep doing for whatever reason. Maybe it's a kind of an escape. But that importance of rest, I think, is a very valuable teaching for us, especially in this very driven culture. Stink bug on my screen. Go over there. Angela will take you. It's under there. It's attached to your. Yeah, thank you. I don't kill stink bugs, but I do I escort them out. Pardon?
You escort them under Genjo's cushion.
I give them to Genjo to escort out. Passing them over to Kiku. So anyway, so this idea of never wavering when you're a bodhisattva, never wavering from a powerful aspiration to be a benefit to everyone, I think that might be a little misleading, because I don't think that it's possible as humans to never waver. But I do think that when you kind of get inspired by a teacher, as I was by all of my teachers really, but especially by Katagiri Roshi, it kind of awakens again and again that part of us that creates that wish and that recognition of the value of again and again returning to this practice, because we know that that's the only way to really experience life and help all beings. I mean, a lot of what Bodhisattva practice is just suffering, being with our suffering so that we recognize the source of it, and thereby being able to be compassionate with other people who suffer in the same way. I used to kind of want to escape my suffering and try to figure out ways to not feel that angst that suffering brings us. And over the years I've become aware that suffering is one of the greatest gifts, because it allows me to really not only recognize the source of my own suffering, but also to recognize the source of human suffering and be able to be compassionate, be able to be empathetic towards others that are suffering. So this Bodhisattva practice is constantly kind of it is wavering. But it's the kind of wavering that we can recognize and be reminded to once again come back to this practice and find that harmony to share with others. And then we really don't have to do anything. Katagiri Roshi's greatest teaching was his embodiment, his effort. That embodiment was his effort. And anytime we see that effort in each other, we can be inspired. So Jesus, I was thinking about the words of Jesus, love one another as I have loved you. And there was this song that we sang in the Catholic Church, and I don't have much voice anymore, so I'm a little reluctant to try and share it, but it's such a nice song, and I think that it comes from the teachings of Jesus, as written down in the Gospel of John. We'll sing the song. Love one another as I have loved you, and care for each other as I have cared for you, and bear one another's burdens and share each other's joys, and love one another, and bring each other home. To me, that's the Bodhisattva vow. In Soto Zen tradition, we receive that as the third. What's the third of the three? What are those three? What are they called? The three great. They're to avoid the three refuges. The three.
Is it perfect?
No, I'm sorry. They're to avoid what is unwholesome, to do what is wholesome, and to embrace and benefit all beings. What are those three called?
The three pure precepts.
The three pure precepts. They're part of the 16 Bodhisattva precepts that we receive in Soto Zen practice. The three pure precepts. So, of course, to avoid what is unwholesome, to avoid what is called evil, to do what is wholesome. I like the word wholesome because it has a holistic feeling to it. And to embrace and benefit all beings is the Soto Zen, and that embrace and benefit all beings is the Bodhisattva vow. That's how it's expressed in these three pure precepts. And if we look at the 10 grave precepts, thinking about the three pure precepts, they are, we can practice them in three different ways. One is to do something, to avoid something which is harmful or unharmonious, to do something which is helpful or harmonious, but when we can also see the 10 Bodhisattva, or the 10 grave precepts as the Bodhisattva precepts to embrace and benefit all beings. If we see each one of those precepts in that way, that is a Bodhisattva practice. I was also thinking about the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, and I'm not sure that I got it right, but it's make me an instrument of your peace. Where there's hatred, let me sow love. Where there's injury, pardon. Where there's doubt, faith. Where there's despair, hope. Grant that I may be. Sorry, I don't remember it. that I may not. I was just thinking of it this morning. But anyway, you probably are all familiar with it, but it's it's really a prayer of kind of considering all beings and not just ourselves. That I seek not so much to be forgiven as to forgive, to be loved as to love, or to be pardoned as to pardon, something like that. It takes us out of just our personal. So what does this all come around to? And if you look at the life of Jesus, he really was wanting to help all beings experience that same kind of freedom. Of course, the teachings of Jesus you can find in the teachings of the great master of the Essenes, as found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So they weren't unique to him, but somehow he practiced with the Essene community, which was the Essene community was a kind of a back to the spirit of spiritual practice kind of. They challenged the spirituality of the time, and you can see Jesus was doing it from the time he was already 12 years old, according to the Gospels that talk about his life, that he was challenging the thinking of the spiritual teachers of that time, and then disappeared from the story. His story disappeared, and I think it was because he was absorbing really the teachings of this teacher who lived in the 3 centuries before Christ, who's referenced in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And my feeling is that the Essenes in general were very influenced by the teachings of Buddha. So even to the point where Jesus' disciples called him master. That master-disciple relationship really came from India. And it was all overland, India. In India, the Buddhists were kind of pushed out. And so I think they just started walking and met up with these people that were coming from the other direction. So I think that Bodhisattva spirit of just deep realizing that the spiritual aspiration is what we all have to continually return to. Returning to silence, returning to the silence which awakens in us that bodhicitta. And because that's what Jesus was doing. He was a beggar, he was giving, just like we give in takuhatsu, that begging practice in Asia is all about monks just share the teaching, and people can participate. People that are not pursuing that life of a monk can participate by supporting those who are making that effort to share the teachings. And that's what happened if you look at at Jesus' life, when he was wandering around and with these disciples just kind of following him around. He was just welcomed into people's homes and taken care of, and just living that same kind of life of a bodhisattva. Yeah, they fly too. See what happens when you let them free. So anyway, that's pretty much what I had to say this year. Every year I talk about Jesus was a bodhisattva. And what it does is it brings back this question for me of what is bodhisattva. My first experience with kind of thinking about this was at one of our first, it was probably our first practice period in Minnesota by 1977 or something. And Katagiri Roshi gave us all a question, and we each had to give about a 20-minute talk about it. And one of the questions was, what is a bodhisattva? And I just had no idea what a bodhisattva was, and I was trying to think about it and trying to read things about it, and my family had some kind of gathering. I think it was Easter or something like that, and I had to talk the next day, and so I kept thinking, oh, I've got to go home and think about what I'm going to talk about and write something down. But I didn't want to leave. For some reason, I just was really enjoying being with my mother and some of my nieces. And so I was sitting in the living room, and I thought, well, let me just think about this here. And I was just sitting in the living room. My mom was over here, and she was doing something. And my niece was over here, or my nephew, one of the nieces or nephews over here, playing with blocks or playing with something. And suddenly, this child did something that was kind of dangerous. And before I even was consciously aware of it, my mother was there, preventing this danger. And I thought, mothers are natural bodhisattvas. That's, it's that no gap. It's just respond to the situation before you even say, what is happening and what can I do about this? So that's a very good example, I think, of a bodhisattva. And I think that if you look at somebody like Jesus, or somebody like Katagiri Roshi, or somebody like the Dalai Lama, somebody like Thich Nhat Hanh, who have just said, I just devote myself to this, to what I've awakened to. That's what it's all about. There's this priest, Father Joe, that I always listen to, and he said, maybe put your right foot in and put your right foot out. Maybe that is what it's all about. So, what do you think? Maggie, do you have something to say?
See, now I've got a hand in front of my face. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Can, okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, Tejo. I really appreciated this offering, especially this time of year, at the beginning of a new year, at the end of an old year, and to remind myself about this vow that illumines my heart. The first time I ever heard the word bodhicitta or bodhisattva, I was at my first Thich Nhat Hanh retreat. And the minute I heard it, I knew that was me. And so I immediately wanted to take the bodhisattva vows and found out that wasn't possible. And I think it took me some other years to figure out what it meant. I like that question because I didn't think about it and knew what it meant, and then I had to really come to terms with life to see well, how does that work in the world? How can I be this way? And to have these models like Katagiri Roshi, like Thich Nhat Hanh, really continue to inspire me and kept me going. Because there's a part of me that's really lazy. So that was but I appreciate your talk. I appreciate that Catholic song. I didn't know that one. I didn't get that in Catechism. I think it's perfect. And so thank you so much for singing that. And I've got a short poem of Larry's, if that's okay. If anybody else has something to say, I won't.
No,
I'm
no,
okay.
please.
Okay, hang on.
Tell us some of Larry's poems.
But my Dharma name his true original vow. And so for 25 years, I've really reflected on the great vow. And to me, the Bodhisattva vow is a great vow. Maybe there's another one, but that's the one for me. And here was Larry's short poem that I quite love. A vow. A vow is like the wind at your back, like the path to the ocean above the Sangha shore. A full and open heart of just one person is enough to change the world. The full and open heart of two people can cause the sun and the moon to move and the stars to shine brighter than ever. And to me, this is about Sangha and how when we walk together and practice together, we can change. We can change ourselves and each other just by showing up. So I appreciate you looking at that Anne Klein verse. I've experienced Thich Nhat Hanh wavering. I've certainly experienced myself wavering, and I think that's part of our practice and path, is that we will waver. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hold up that book?
Okay, it's called Morning Night.
Yeah. It's now out, and this is a collection of Larry Ward's poems, which he sent in just before he died.
I don't know how he got that done that final year. He was so sick.
He had to. He was living on air. Anything else? Anybody else?
It's okay. Sometimes saying it out loud helps me congeal something. I'm often watching, like, what is the thread that I'm carrying through everything where it wanders around, this idea of wavering, Bodhisattva. And when you told the story about the mother in that moment preventing something, I thought, oh, a Bodhisattva isn't a thing you attain, it's something you just have the capacity to participate in. And if I work my practice, I have the capacity to just show up in that moment. And maybe people who, like Jesus or Buddha or Dalai Lama, just have the capacity to keep participating in that moment over and over again. And then you're right about the wavering isn't a failing, it's just feedback in the system, in my kind of congealment. And when I had that thought, I went, oh, that's totally doable. I can just, over the course of a billion lifetimes, just keep showing up and, strengthening that capacity in some sense to show up. So it was a beautiful sort of softening realization about just that one moment of like, oh, don't, because I can participate in a moment. To some extent, I can do that. So that was lovely. Thank you. So maybe that will help unravel something or loosen something for someone else too, just in saying that.
Thank you. Thank you. That was beautiful.
That was really helpful for me as well.
Yeah, that was very nice. One of the things I want to share with you before we close, it's getting pretty close. I went, the last time I was in Japan, one of the young girls from here, she's not a girl anymore, but she was 16 at the time, she went with us, and she was very into green tea, and so we went to Uji because there's a whole street of green tea vendors, so we were sampling tea all the way down the street, and at the end of the street there's a huge old Buddhist temple, and I want to say it's from like the 12th century or something, but it might be older than that. It's not Zen, but it's a Buddhist temple with grounds and everything there. So we went there, and one of the things that was part of this temple, and it's a round temple, and on the walls there were all these wooden carvings, and some of them they preserved because they're wood, of bodhisattvas. And I was going to dig out that book to show you all, but I don't know where it is right now. And each one of these bodhisattvas was singing or playing an instrument or dancing. And I thought, that's the Bodhisattva spirit. It's so beautiful to just, you think Bodhisattva and it could mean, I've got to do this, I've got to help others and all this kind of stuff, but just sing a song, just play some music, just do some dancing. That in itself, if you see a beautiful dance or if you hear some music that, like I love live music because it's very present. It's just like what you were talking about, it's musicians being present with you and sharing something. And dance is the same way. If you see somebody who really embodies the dance, really becomes the dance, it's such a beautiful thing to behold. And it's a beautiful thing to experience too. Any other thoughts before we... Thank you all.
May the merit of this practice
May the merit of this practice
benefit all beings
benefit all beings
and bring peace.
and bring peace. I'll do my final 3 prostrations and then we'll do the exit.